It seems almost obvious that if you announce we are going to reduce the risk for a criminal to commit a crime, you would see more crime, right? Well, that's exactly what's happening in California. See, California passed something called Prop 47. The idea was to free up police resources by making any kind of shoplifting or drug use under $950 in value, it would be a misdemeanor. Not only that, but selective enforcement means people know that no one's really going to pursue a small shoplifting incident anyway. Well, what some people thought was that if you reduce the risk and the penalty for the crime, you'll see more of it. But come on, let's be real. Who cares if someone steals a candy bar? It's an acceptable risk, and the police have to focus on bigger issues, right? Wrong. Apparently what's happened now is organized crime. People know that they can go in and steal multiple items just under $950. The cops won't do anything about it. So what they do is they go in, they steal $900 worth of merchandise, hand it to somebody, then wait and go back and do it again. Let me tell you something interesting, and we'll read this story. I knew a dude a long time ago, a criminal guy. He went to prison. He went to prison for what I'm about to explain to you, so don't do this. He explained how he stole credit card numbers, and he made sure everything what he would do is he wouldn't buy items. Say he wanted something big. He said what he learned was if he bought something for a couple grand, all of a sudden you're talking about grand larceny, this big felony. So what he would do is he would do cash advances just under the minimum of what would be a felony multiple times. So he would get charged with multiple misdemeanors. At least that's what he said. I could be wrong about how it worked, but that was a general idea that he did this. He got caught because let's be real, dude. You get caught when you do this. Okay. Paper trails. It was really dumb. He did it for a while, but here's the thing. He still got prison. They weren't playing this game, but that was at least what he thought was going to happen. To an extent, he was kind of right. He was only breaking laws that were misdemeanors, but still able to steal thousands of dollars. In the end, don't think the judges are going to be like, well, you got us. No, they know exactly what's up. But in this instance, combine that with selective enforcement, and all of a sudden now, you get away with it. So I will first stress, do not commit crimes, please. That's the point of this video. I want to talk about how community and a scale of cities results in this problem that can't be solved. First, I am 100% for criminal justice reform to an extreme degree. I think the entire prison system, not just private prisons, all of it is terrible. It doesn't work. It works insofar as it's like, well, at least the criminal is gone for a few years, but they'll come back later. We need to figure out how to integrate people in society and make them part of a community. The problem is, however, that big cities are no longer communities. Think about New York City. You get on the train, or any big city, you get on the train, do you talk to anybody? Of course not. Your neighbors who live next to you. How many of you watching this who live in a city know who lives in the apartment, upstairs and 2 units down? You probably don't. I lived in a building in New York. I had no idea who anybody in my building was. And that's kind of crazy when you consider that if there's a disaster or a fire, you're going to have to rely on these people. They're your neighbors. If you hear a scream or a loud noise, you got to know what to do and who's down there and what might have happened. Maybe it's an old lady. Maybe she fell. Maybe it's a movie they're watching. But people there's no community anymore. We're breaking apart. I mean, take a look at that video about the women. It's that old viral video, a woman walking around in New York for 10 hours. They were actually criticizing several people because some of the catcalling was people being like, how's it going? Have a nice day. They were like, oh, how dare you say hello to me? There was creepy stuff in the video, like a dude walking next to her for a long time and people saying like, ooh, girl, and stuff like that. I get all that. But hello? Have a nice day? They were critical of that. We are pushing ourselves away. And I will tell you this, the more we fragment our communities, the more we will see this crime. Because here's the thing. This crime happens partly because these people don't care about any of the other people. They don't know who they are. They don't know what they're dealing with, and they don't care. Now, there was a story recently they're called flash rob. A flash rob is when you run into a store and grab a bunch of stuff, run out. What they're saying in the story essentially is that as long as they steal less than $950 per attempt, they're good because the cops are not going to come out for it. So they organize this. I will admit, though, when I saw the video of the Apple store getting robbed, like they would run in and grab a book and then run out, I'm like, first of all, that doesn't count here because those computers are worth more than $950. But also, man, I'm not super concerned about, look, crime is bad, don't steal stuff, but There's a big difference between stealing from some dude who bought a computer and is struggling to get by and stealing from an Apple store. Let's be real. In the end, though, I think it's all the same crime, right? I just have a little bit less sympathy for major corporations who exploit people and have these fringe ideologies and want to suppress rights and do these horrifying things overseas. So, forgive me if I'm not going to cry over it. I still think it's wrong, okay? And I still think they should get in trouble to the same degree. But, basically, actually, let me read this story so I can give you the full details. And I want to talk to you about the idea of how this plays into multiculturalism and what people get wrong about it. Because I think everybody is speaking a different language. They talk about a dude who went and stole pants. They mention everything I already did. They say this. Over in the city by the Bay's famous Tenderloin district, Cassie, a 21-year-old mother of two and a former heroin junkie, told Fox News that when times were tough, she too has stolen from stores. If my babies need diapers or formula, who is going to get that for me? No one. I have to do it. They ain't out here arresting people for shoplifting, and everyone knows it. Prop 47 is seen by critics as one of California's biggest blunders. Supported by the state Democratic Party and championed by the ACLU, the referendum was passed by a wide margin in 2014. The idea behind it was to reduce certain nonviolent felonies to misdemeanors in order to free up resources for cops and prosecutors to focus on violent offenders. Now, here's the problem. They say, since it was passed, there have been an increase in theft across the state. Cities like San Francisco have seen organized crime rings turn shoplifting into a well-organized racket involving desperate thieves and unscrupulous black market sellers. Among the nation's 20 largest cities, SF now has the highest rate of property crime, which includes theft, shoplifting, and vandalism. But don't forget, Antifa is in that property crime section too, so you got a lot of problems going on. Here's the thing. Let's talk about multiculturalism, and I want to explain to you why I think this is happening. It's not about the punishment. There are places, in my neighborhood right now where I live, in the suburbs. If I left my wallet in the middle of the street, I'd be willing to bet one of the kids who finds it walking down the street would bring it to my house. Actually, they know who I am. They'd see it, and they'd bring it to my house, and then probably cross their fingers for a reward, which I would give them. What about New York City? Most people are going to open it up, pull the money out, throw it in a mailbox, and walk away. Some people will do right, but ultimately, there are cultural standards, and there is a level of do I care about you or not. In big cities, the answer is it's pretty much a no. Okay, you find something, what do you want me to do about it? I don't know who you are. Find your wallet, man. I'm sorry, dude. It's good. It's as good as gone. If it were me, okay, my ethics, my morality. If I found a wallet, I'd immediately do my best to contact the person whose ID is in it, or drop it in a mailbox if I couldn't do that. Because most people don't know, if you put it in a mailbox, they'll look at the address on the ID and send it there. So make sure you keep your license and IDs updated. But here's where multiculturalism comes in. There's two different views of what's happening. On the right, they view multiculturalism as like you've got American culture and say like Islamic culture, and they're not the same thing. They both disagree on how people should live, so they fight. Right? So in like Islamic culture, there's rules about blasphemy. There's rules about women covering up. That can't work with American culture. On the left, they view multiculturalism as existing underneath their culture. It's very culturally imperialistic. They think we have this. It's why they do the Latinx thing, right? Why white progressives say Latinx, because they're imposing their culture on you and telling you you can dress that way so long as you agree with our beliefs. That's their view, that you exist under the umbrella of Western culture. Although they're very critical of Western culture, ultimately, they want to be overarching. Like, if you agree with all of us, you're allowed to exist here, not side by side. Here's what happens. As cities get bigger and bigger and bigger, communities are not intertwined. Very few people in New York are going to be like, you and me are New Yorkers, we got to protect each other. No, that's not going to happen. It's going to be breaking down on political lines, on class lines, and on race lines. So for me, like when I got mugged once in Chicago, it was a dude from the south side of Chicago who lived right by me. When I was on the north side, tried mugging me, not realizing we lived in the same neighborhood. So this dude from the south side goes to the north side to get the crime. That's what I think is going to happen. When they make these laws a bit more lax, you reduce the risk, so naturally you're going to increase the output. And the reason why the crime, in my opinion, is not going to go down is because they don't care about you. You are not them. First of all, this one lady, she's got kids. Man, people will do a lot of things for their kids, even against their own community if it means their survival. But think about what happens now. You've got people who live in, say, like Oakland. It's a bit poorer. They're going to go to SF and they're going to shoplift knowing they can't get in trouble. The cops won't invest. They're not going to do anything about it. They have no resources. Here's where the scaling problem comes in. Make too many people, put too many people in one area. There's not enough police to police everything. You will get more crime. It will require more money to pay for the police in the various areas, and eventually the scale just becomes untenable. I believe there's an upper limit, at least right now, based on our technology, as to how big a city can really get before it just stops functioning properly. You go to New York, you go to Chicago, you go to LA, and there are just abandoned buildings everywhere. Neighborhoods just decrepit and falling apart because they've become too big. There's, people will walk away instead of fixing it because it's easier. And the other thing too is, when you have like a small village, a couple houses and a couple dozen people, well, you're less likely to see complete disrepair because everyone is tied to, hey, this is our store. We need to figure out how to fix it up because we need these resources shipped in, okay? But when you go to a big city, you'll see like a Walmart start losing business. Eventually people say, not my problem, and they walk away because there's no community anymore. So I think the big challenge is, multiculturalism to me is a buzzword that means very little. What we need is community building and community ties. What I believe would reduce crime is people knowing knowing each other. But ultimately, I don't think it can be done. We can only know so many people, right? I tell this story about how I once got pulled over. I wasn't speeding. I was actually exiting off of Lakeshore Drive in Chicago, but I got pulled over. And the cop walked up and said, hey, I pulled you over. I said, no, I'm sorry, officer, I have no idea. And he said, you were speeding. And I was confused, and I said, I'm actually pulling over to the exit. Like, I wasn't speeding. At no point was I speeding. Like, I was going the speed limit. And then by the time, in the past few minutes, I actually slowed down below the speed limit of 45 because I was looking for my exit and I didn't know where it was. This was before smartphones, actually. I think this was just a little bit before. It was like 2006 maybe. And so the cop looked at me and said, yep, sign here, tell it to a judge. And I was like, wait, what? Yep, sign here, tell it to a judge. I was like, but I didn't do anything wrong. Why am I getting a ticket? Don't care. The cop said, if you don't sign it, I'll arrest you. Or something like that. And so I was like, whatever, and I signed it. And this created a whole mess of problems for me because I didn't know that. So eventually I just paid the ticket off, like, whatever, man. It's easier than going to court, missing work and all that. And that got my license suspended because if you get 2 moving violations under 21, they suspend your license. Then I couldn't drive. It was a nightmare. The reason I tell you this story is because think about what happens in a small town, a functioning community. The sheriff knows who you are, and you get pulled over, and he gets angry, and he says, what am I supposed to tell your dad? Okay, you're speeding down here now. I got to deal with this. If they know you, they're more willing to be like, I'm going to cut you some slack because I know you don't want to make me angry and let me down because there will be ramifications within our community. As our communities grow, nobody cares. Think about it. If some dude goes to SF and steals your computer, does he care? No. Oh, you're mad at me? I don't know you, dude. So what? In a small town, you can get exiled, shunned, and it's very, very dangerous. So I think part of this problem is we cannot afford to expand our policing and deal with the amount of crime as cities get bigger and bigger and bigger. Because I'll put it this way. Let's say you've got 100 people in a small town. I talk about the scaling problem all the time. 1% of that population is criminal. That's one guy. So you know who the one guy is, and you're like, keep your eyes on him. That dude's a criminal. We deal with it all the time. We know him. Just pay attention to it. We've kicked him out. He's been arrested. It is what it is. Now think about a town with 1 million people, and you got 1% committing crime. You got 1,000 people. You can't keep track of all that. So now instead of hiring one sheriff who knows exactly who Jim is, you're gonna hire what, 1,000 cops? It's gonna get more and more expensive to scale up. You still can't cover all of the ground. And when the shoplifting happens, they say, what do you want us to do about it? The dude's gone. We're not going to find him. It's an insane amount of money to try and track down every single person who does this. There is an upper limit, in my opinion. The last thing, I'll end by saying this. I do think this idea was, it's a surface level solution. Hey, I know, if we make this just a misdemeanor, then we'll free up police resources. Right. If you tell cops, don't police something, you will be able to move the cops somewhere else. End of story. So that means knowing the police can't handle it, you're signaling to them saying, listen, we need police resources elsewhere. We can't handle the shoplifting. So they're like, all right. You basically just told everybody by law, by proposition, you can't afford to deal with policing this stuff. And then you lowered the risk. Done. What do you think's going to happen? California, you're crazy. Long story short, the general idea I'm talking about is that it's not, our communities can only get so big. And at a certain point, people just don't care about each other. There's an idea of a national community, but there's just so many different groups even within the country. And I'm beginning to think things are in dire straits because you have people in America who really do hate America. And it used to be a talking point from conservatives where it's like the liberals, Democrats hate America. It's like today they're literally saying they hate America and they chant things like make California Mexico again. So yeah, we're really at that point. What do you think's going to happen? You think they're going to come to defend you? No, they're going to leave. If push comes to shove, and a real disaster hits America, I assure you there's many people who are going to be like, I'm going to move to New Zealand or Canada. And that means they don't care about you. They don't care about the community. I mean, all of the people who said they were going to move to Canada when Trump got elected, they stayed because of the wealth and the comfort, nothing else. But the idea that you would leave the country when it's in dire straits, to me, is shocking. It means you don't care. Whatever, you get the point. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. YouTube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel. I will see you then.